Hey everybody, before I transitioned from the tent to the hammock a few years back, in the beginning there was a lot of things I didn't know. The very first hammock my son Zach and I purchased about 20 years ago, we took it on a trip and we'd set it up at camp and we would just use it for kicking back. And taking a nap was very quick because it became uncomfortable very quickly. So it really wasn't a viable option for a shelter at that time. So our main shelter was still the tent. So let's fast forward to today. If I had to choose between a tent or a hammock, I'm always gonna take the hammock. And I reflect back in those days when I first started using it, I could have easily abandoned it, but I definitely seen the potential of using a hammock camping. What changed from then and now was overcoming the mistakes I was making. And because of the mistakes from back then, I find that people who do not like hammocks are making the same ones. In this episode, we're going to look at those mistakes. Not only for the people who do not like hammocks, but for those who are starting out who may be struggling. The first mistake people often make, and I believe it is a big one, and I know it's going to ruffle some feathers, is getting a hammock that's too short. And also in most cases, being too narrow and too wide. These are the ones that are flooding the market, and unfortunately, they're the least expensive ones. And because they're the least expensive ones, people are purchasing them, and they try them out, they get in it, they find they're uncomfortable, and they come to the conclusion that I don't like hammocks. Unless you're small in stature or you're going to use it for a small child, please do not buy a hammock under 10 feet, 304 centimeters in length. And this is why. When lying in a hammock, to get comfortable, you want to lie as flat as you can, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. But in those short little hammocks, after getting in them, you have to move around in what I call the crappie flop, trying to get comfortable. I'm constantly moving around, trying to find that flat lie to get comfortable. Now I definitely can see why people who have those short ones don't like hammocks. Now as you can see, this hammock is too short and too narrow. I got shoulder squeeze, my feet are almost hanging out, trying to find a flat lie. This would be a good one to take on a hike because they're so small and compact, so they do have a purpose for hanging at the park. But as far as sleeping overnight or hammock camping, I recommend getting a longer one. Like I said, at least 10 feet, 11 feet even better. You gotta be careful getting in and out of these short ones because they can be dangerous. Now this is one of those short wide hammocks, and you can see that there's a lot of material hanging over, and it's almost like a bowl shape. And it's hard to find a flat lie in this. If I was shorter, it'd probably work. As a matter of fact, this is the first hammock I slept overnight in. And you can see there's a lot of shoulder squeeze, and I got a calf ridge. And it's really hard to find a flat lie. And I know a lot of people have these hammocks and they say that they work for them. And if it works for you, that's great. But I highly recommend getting one a little bit longer and not so wide. Now remember, always do what works for you, and always do it good. Now this hammock is just too short, and it's just too narrow. Now this hammock is just too short, and it's just too wide. Now this hammock is just right. I have no shoulder squeeze, I have no calf ridge, I have a flat lie. It is very comfortable, and the problem with this hammock is I never want to get out. Matter of fact, I'm going to take a little nap. Now for those short and wide hammocks that are called a double or a two-person hammock, you guys, it's a gimmick. A gathered-in hammock is specifically made for one person. It conforms around the body, which makes it so great. I don't care how wide it is or how many people you can get in there. You get two people in here and they're going to compress together, and it's going to make everything very uncomfortable. The blood circulation is going to be cut off, and before you know it, someone's going to bail. And for those companies that offer a double or two-person gathered-in hammock, unless it's a hybrid, walk away from them. No, run from them. Now the second reason why people don't like hammocks, and it's a two-parter, being that it takes too long to set up and there's a little bit of a learning curve to them. First, let's look at the learning curve. Last month, my niece came out from Southern California and she brought her husband and child, and we borrowed a tent because we're gonna go camping up in northern Minnesota. And when I was setting up that huge tent, I struggled trying to figure out how that thing goes up. And eventually I went to the tent bag and found those instructions. And after reading those instructions, I had no problem setting it up. But the problem with hammocks is that they don't come with any instructions. And what you have to do, because it's a new thing and a lot of people don't know nothing about them, is you have to go to YouTube, and hopefully you'll find me, hopefully. And the best way to figure this out is to practice. Practice setting it up at home before you take it out on a trip. Learn how to dial it in by setting it up and taking it down multiple times. But also sleeping overnight in it to get the bugs out before your first night at camp. As far as setup time, unless you have 2 trees picked out and you're not setting up the tarp, because campsites come with tent pads, a tent is faster to set up. For me, one of the greatest joys at camp is setting up the hammock, finding and then hanging on 2 trees for this epic view, or tweaking the tarp in many different configurations to combat those different conditions. I really do love setting up at camp. And as far as time, after both are set up, the hammock is by far more superior to the tent when at camp. Now the third reason why people don't like hammocks is because they can't get comfortable in it. And if you have one of those short, narrow ones, no wonder why. But if you have one of those 10, 11, 12 footers and you still struggle, and even for those stomach sleepers, I believe you can sleep in a gathered in hammock on your back or even on your side. It just takes longer to fall asleep. And the reason why people struggle to get comfortable in a gathered in hammock is because they lie straight up and down or symmetrical, which will force the head and the legs up to a position or a shape like a banana.
Holy moly!
This is so uncomfortable. I feel like a banana. Come on, man! To remedy that problem, you have to lie asymmetrical or diagonal in the hammock to achieve a flat lie. There's no banana man here. This is so comfy. Time for another nap. And if you're still not comfortable, there's other things you can do, like raising the foot end a little higher, or adjusting the ridge line for different sags. And when you have a hammock that fits you, you want the suspension right around 30-degree angle. And those that have those short, narrow ones, you can't get comfortable in them, so what they'll do is they'll take that suspension and get it as tight as they can to a 0-degree angle.
Come on, come on, come on, baby.
Which will put a lot of pressure on the suspension, and more so the hammock, which could damage even both, and even worse, damage you. Now the fourth reason why people don't like hammocks is because of the frozen butt syndrome. And the reason why hammocks stay so cool is that they are suspended in the open where circulating air robs heat from all around. On those hot days and nights, this is a benefit. When I'm hiking all day and I'm hot and overheating, without that insulation underneath the hammock, when I get in there, I cool down very fast. Before long, I have cooled down, especially during those hot, humid nights. So on those cool and cold nights, a sleeping bag by itself will not cut it. I guarantee you're gonna get cold. And I can see why people would dump the hammock after freezing all night. So what you're gonna need is some type of insulation underneath you. Underquilts are the best, but for someone trying out this hammock thing and they don't wanna invest a lot of money in it right now, and they're on a budget, there's other alternatives like a sleeping pad or a foam mat, in which I did an episode recently on how to use these. I highly recommend that you check it out. And the last reason why people don't like hammocks is because they never tried them. Well, This ends this episode. If you like this video, please hit that like button down below. You guys, it really does help the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and a little bell icon, and that'll notify you when the next episode is coming out. And if you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to add, anything I missed, please write them down below. I love to hear from you. This is the Marine. Thank you for watching, and God bless.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin. Even with my eyes still closed, I can feel it.